everyone, it's Ileana, and I have another card to share with you today. This one doesn't have a lot of stamping, but it's a quite cute card. I'm starting off with a mylar sheet. It's just a plastic sheet that someone had given me to sample. And I'm using my favorite things, wonky stitched rectangle. So I trimmed down the piece and ran it through my Big Shot. And the wonky stitched, the largest one is just a little bit smaller than an A2 card, so I have to figure out where the center is so that I can get everything lined up. I am using my grid sheet that's available on my website for free, and I've centered the mylar sheet with the grid so that I could get everything centered in the middle of my card. I did have to turn the light up a little bit so that I could see a little bit better, and I'll turn off the light in just a second. I'm stamping the word just with black just to see if it's centered, and I'm using my mouse pad, and I like the mouse pad because you can wipe it off once you figure out if everything is lined up. I've made a couple of tick marks on my mylar sheet so that I could make sure that my tree is centered. And I'm just going to stamp on the sheet so that I could get my tree. And I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Corbel Tree Collage die. And I'm just using there's a point at the top and then in the center of the bottom of the tree. And I'm just using those to make sure that everything's lined up. Once I know where it is supposed to go, I'm just going to go ahead and use a little bit of Post-it tape to hold it down while I run it through my Big Shot again. I'm going to go ahead and peel off my die from the mylar sheet, and a lot of the little pieces stay in the mylar sheet, so I'm just going to poke them out with my retractable pick, and they come off really easy. I'm using this new product. It's new for me. It is the cherry wood paper from Altenew, and I'm just going to trim it down and then run it through my die cutter with the largest wonky stitched rectangle die from My Favorite Things. And I do have also some wood grain textured paper that I had from a kit, and I think you can still get it. And if I find it, I will link it in the supply list below. And the wood grain paper from Altenew is very thin and the edges kind of curl up. So I'm using my magnets to hold it down. I'm stamping it with Avery L Cherry Pigment Ink. And then I go back and I add some Versamark to it because the Avery L Pigment Ink dries very quickly. And that way my embossing powder will stick to it. And the wood grain paper is very textured, so it is very hard to get it into the crevices. But with the heat and stick, it shouldn't be a problem. So with the heat and stick, you add the powder and you melt it like you would a regular embossing powder, and it becomes sticky. You don't want to melt it too much or else the stickiness goes away. And so I'm going to add my red glitter. I don't have any red embossing powder, but I have red glitter. And I'm going to funnel it back into the container. And then I will heat set the glitter into the heat and stick. So you just have to do it just a little bit so the glitter adheres and then it won't rub off at all. So now I'm going to take my stencil that I created, and I'm using this basting adhesive. It's for quilters, and it's the stuff that I would add sticky to my cutting mats for my Cricut and my silhouette or my cameo. And it is sticky enough that it will adhere to the paper, but it'll still peel up. And I did notice that I had a few little pieces that didn't pop out of the die. And so I'm just sticking it back on. And then I'm using my magnets to hold everything back together, and I'm using my MISTI, and I have my mouse pad so that I could wipe everything off. And I'm using the Nouveau Glimmer Paste in Emerald Green. And what I did notice is that I didn't brayer my stencil enough, and so some of the green went underneath the stencil, and I just, while it was still wet, I just took my pick and I just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. So what I ended up doing was I cleaned off my mask, and then I added more of the spray to it so that it was a little bit more sticky. And now I'm going to really brayer down that stencil so that I can make sure that it's totally stuck and nothing will get underneath it. I'm just using my scissors to push it down. And now I'm going to add my paste again. And this one did turn out much better. And I ended up making 3 of these. And when I was done, I just went over to the sink and rinsed off my palette and my stencil. And I'm just carefully peeling it. Since I had made sure that it was stuck really well, it did stick to the paper, but it did peel up and it didn't rip anything. And so I'm just trying to scrape off as much as this glimmer paste as I can. And now I'm adding some adhesive to a piece of cardstock because the cherry paper is very thin. I'm just adding something to make it a little bit thicker. And I did wait overnight to touch it. And I've cut another piece of the cherry wood paper, and I've cut it to the same size as an A2 card front, but you couldn't really see the difference, and I wanted a little bit of a difference in color so that you could really see that panel pop up. So I'm taking some Distress ink, and this is Vintage Photo, and I'm just lightly adding it to the edge of the wood grain paper. And if you get too much, you can actually wipe it off because there was a point where I just thought there was too much. And I am using my mouse pad. It's a lot easier to use the mouse pad as a craft mat than it is to pull out that big sheet, put it on my desk. And you can see that one corner is really, really dark. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll just wipe the color off. Now I'm adding it to my craft cardstock, my card base. And I was really conflicted about what color to put underneath, so I ended up just going with the neutral. I'm adding my foam adhesive, and then I'm going to center it on my card panel. And this is where I kind of think that that upper corner is a little too dark, so I'm just going to wipe it off. And I think that kind of really frames the card. And for the other cards, I'm just going to use craft cardstock. Oh, and this is where my daughter came in and needed help with her schoolwork. We do homeschool, so she works right across from me, and when she needs help, she'll come over and I'll help her with her math or whatever subject she's working on. And now I'm just adding some pretty pink posh confetti stars to the top with glue dots, and it's a big enough star so that it's appropriate for the tree. I was kind of trying to figure out whether I wanted to add some bling to the tree, like ornaments, but I thought that it was glimmery on its own, and I didn't want to add too much, and so I kind of just left it the way it was. So I'm just going to add stars to the rest. I'm using my craft knife to stick it to the back of the stars. And I think that's it for the cards. I'm going to show you close up in just a little bit so you could see how well the stencil worked. And you could pretty much use anything you want to create your stencil. If you want to use a transparency sheet, that way you could reuse it, or you can just use some cardstock and then you can toss it when you're done. If you do the cardstock, you can make multiples and then toss them as you use them up. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like what you see, be sure you give the video a thumbs up and be sure to also subscribe. I hope you have a great day. Bye.